When the discussion reached a point where I had input, my heart started beating faster, and I could feel the hesitation rising in my chest. That familiar voice in my head began whispering doubts, asking, what if this sounds stupid? What if they disagree? What if my English is not clear enough? But because I had prepared my first sentence, I did not have to think about how to begin. I simply said it, and once that first sentence came out, the rest followed more naturally than I expected. It was not perfect. I paused once and rephrased a sentence. But I finished my point. And something surprising happened. Nobody attacked me. Nobody laughed. Nobody corrected my grammar. They nodded. One person built on my idea. Another asked a follow-up question. The meeting continued as if nothing dramatic had happened. That moment changed me. Not because I delivered something brilliant, but because I realized the fear had been exaggerated in my own mind. Most of the pressure was internal, not external. Let me ask you something directly. How many times have you imagined negative reactions that never actually happened? We create worst-case scenarios in our minds. We imagine judgment, criticism, embarrassment. But in reality, most professionals are focused on solving the problem, not analyzing your sentence structure. Confidence begins to grow when reality replaces imagination. When you see that your contribution is received normally, your mind slowly releases its exaggerated fear response. That is when progress truly begins. The next important lesson I learned was that speaking confidently in meetings is not about speaking more. It is about speaking intentionally. Some people talk constantly but say very little. Others speak less often, yet when they do, everyone listens carefully. Which one would you rather be? Confident communication is not about volume. It is about clarity and purpose. The goal is not to dominate the room, but to add value. One of the biggest mistakes professionals make is waiting for the perfect moment. They wait for complete silence. They wait for direct invitation. They wait for total certainty before speaking. But meetings are dynamic. Conversations overlap. People enter and exit ideas quickly. If you wait for perfection, you will wait forever. Instead of waiting for a perfect moment, prepare to create a respectful moment. There is a difference. You can enter a discussion smoothly with simple, calm language. You do not need aggressive interruption. You need controlled entry and mental readiness. Before every meeting now, I ask myself one question. Where can I add value today? Not how can I sound impressive. Not how can I prove myself. Where can I add value? That shift changed my preparation entirely. Instead of memorizing complex phrases, I prepare insights. Instead of overthinking vocabulary, I clarify my position. When you enter a meeting with value in mind, your focus shifts outward. And when your focus shifts outward, self-doubt reduces naturally. Let us talk about hesitation more deeply. Hesitation usually happens in 3 stages. First, you think of an idea. Second, you evaluate it. Third, you judge yourself. The third stage is the dangerous one because judgment kills momentum. You start thinking, maybe this is not important. Maybe someone else will say it. Maybe this is too simple. But often, simple contributions are powerful. In fact, clarity is often more valuable than complexity. I once attended a meeting where everyone was discussing technical details using complicated language and advanced terminology. There were slides, charts, numbers, and long explanations. Then one person asked a very simple question. What exactly is our main objective here? The room became quiet. That simple question refocused the entire discussion. Confidence is sometimes asking the simplest question in the room. You do not need to sound advanced. You need to sound aware. Let me pause and ask you something. In your meetings, are you trying to sound smart or are you trying to be useful? There is a difference. When you try to sound smart, you become cautious and defensive. When you try to be useful, you become active and engaged. Another powerful realization I had was that your first sentence matters more than your entire paragraph. If you start strongly, your brain relaxes. If you hesitate at the beginning, your anxiety increases. So I began preparing one sentence before every important meeting. Not a script. Not a full speech. Just one clear entry point that I could rely on under pressure. That prepared sentence gave me psychological safety. Preparation reduces fear because it removes uncertainty and gives your mind something solid to stand on. Let me challenge you right now. Think about your next meeting and create one sentence you could prepare in advance. Take a few seconds and form it clearly in your mind. This is how confidence is built. Not by theory alone, but by preparation combined with action. This is how confidence is built. Not by theory alone, but by preparation combined with action. You can read about communication skills for years, but until you open your mouth in a real meeting and test yourself, nothing truly changes. Growth happens in live situations. It happens when your heart beats faster and you speak anyway. Now let us talk about physical presence, because confidence is not only mental. Before speaking, your body often tightens. Your shoulders rise. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your voice may tremble slightly. This is natural. It is your nervous system activating in response to pressure. Your brain interprets attention as risk, even when there is no real danger. But you can control part of it. Before I speak in meetings now, I take one slow breath. I lower my shoulders deliberately. I sit upright. I look at one person instead of scanning the entire room. These small adjustments stabilize my voice. Your body sends signals to your brain. When you sit confidently, your brain interprets it as safety. Confidence is partly physical discipline. The way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you hold eye contact all influence how your message is received. Another turning point for me was accepting that I do not need to speak long to be effective. In fact, shorter contributions often carry more weight. If you speak for 30 seconds with clarity and structure, people listen. If you speak for 3 minutes without direction, they disconnect. Brevity builds credibility. Structure builds authority. When your message is clear and contained, it feels professional. Over time, I also learned how to handle disagreement calmly. In my early days, disagreement felt like conflict. If someone challenged my idea, I took it personally. But disagreement in professional settings is normal. It is not rejection. It is refinement. Most of the time, people are refining the idea, not rejecting you as a person. When someone disagrees, breathe. Listen fully. Do not interrupt defensively. Respond calmly and with clarity. Confidence is not defending aggressively. It is staying composed. It is showing that you can handle pressure without losing control. You can say you see it slightly differently. You can ask for clarification. You can suggest another angle. The key is tone. Tone carries confidence more than vocabulary ever will. Even simple words sound strong when delivered calmly. Let me ask you another question. When someone speaks confidently in meetings, what do you notice first? Is it their grammar or is it their calmness? Usually, it is their calmness. Calmness creates authority. Authority does not require loudness. It requires stability. As we move deeper into this discussion, reflect on something important. What kind of professional do you want to be known as? The silent observer who listens but rarely contributes? Or the thoughtful contributor whose voice adds clarity? Your identity in meetings is shaped by repetition. If you consistently stay silent, people expect silence from you. If you consistently contribute, people expect insight from you. Expectations shape perception. Perception shapes opportunity. Meetings are not just conversations. They are visibility platforms. Your ideas deserve visibility. Your experience deserves a voice. But confidence will not come from waiting. It will come from participating. Every meeting is practice. Every contribution strengthens your professional presence. And one day, without even noticing, you will sit in a meeting and speak naturally. Not because you forced yourself, but because it became part of who you are. That is the goal. Not dramatic transformation. Gradual internal shift. Confidence in meetings is built sentence by sentence, decision by decision, meeting by meeting. And it starts with your next one. And it starts with your next one. Not next month. Not when your English feels perfect. Not when you feel completely fearless. It starts with the very next meeting on your calendar. Before that meeting begins, sit quietly for a moment and make a decision. Decide that you will not measure success by perfection. Measure it by participation. If you speak once with clarity, that is success. If you ask one thoughtful question, that is progress. If you summarize one discussion point, that is growth. Confidence is not built in comfort. It is built in small moments of controlled discomfort. Let me tell you something else I learned the hard way. Silence can slowly damage your professional brand. Not because you lack intelligence, but because people cannot see what you do not express. In corporate environments, perception matters. If you consistently stay quiet, people may assume you lack ideas, even when you have many. That assumption may not be fair, but it is real. I used to believe that hard work alone would speak for itself. I thought if I performed well behind the scenes, recognition would naturally follow. But meetings changed that perspective. Meetings are where alignment happens. Meetings are where decisions are shaped. Meetings are where visibility grows. Speaking is not self-promotion. It is clarity. It is contribution. It is professional responsibility. You are not interrupting the meeting by speaking. You are participating in it. You are adding perspective to the collective thinking of the group. There is also another layer to this that most people do not discuss. Confidence in meetings affects how you see yourself. When you consistently stay silent, your internal voice becomes weaker. You begin to doubt your own thoughts. You hesitate even outside the meeting room. But when you express your ideas regularly, even briefly, you reinforce your own confidence. You prove to yourself that your voice has value. Self-trust grows through action. It does not grow through overthinking. Think about the professionals you respect in meetings. Most of them are not the loudest. They are steady. They are composed. They speak when necessary. They listen actively. Confidence is a balance between speaking and listening. Listening carefully gives you strategic advantage. It allows you to identify gaps, misunderstandings, or opportunities to add clarity. When you speak after listening well, your contribution feels intentional rather than reactive. That is powerful. Another habit I developed over time was summarizing discussions. When conversations became scattered, I would calmly restate the main point. Not to control the meeting, but to bring focus. This builds credibility quickly. When you can bring clarity to complexity, people begin to look at you differently. They see you as someone who thinks clearly under pressure. And here is something important. You do not need advanced vocabulary to do this. You need structured thinking. Structure gives confidence. Before speaking, quickly organize your thought in your mind. What is your main point? What is the reason? What is the outcome? If you speak with that internal structure, your message will sound stronger even if your English is simple. Let me slow down here and ask you something personal. What would change in your career if you consistently spoke with calm confidence in meetings? Would your manager notice you more? Would your ideas influence decisions? Would you feel more respected? Confidence in meetings does not only affect the meeting itself. It affects long-term opportunity. Promotions, leadership roles, project ownership, and visibility often grow from how consistently you contribute. But here is the truth. Nobody is coming to invite you every time. Sometimes you must enter the space yourself. That does not mean being aggressive. It means being ready. It means preparing mentally and emotionally before the discussion begins. Preparation is your secret weapon. Before important meetings, review the agenda. Identify areas where you can add value. Think about potential questions. Prepare 1 or 2 insights. This preparation reduces anxiety because you are not reacting blindly. You are participating intentionally. Now let us talk about fear of mistakes. You will make mistakes. I still do. Sometimes I choose the wrong word. Sometimes I need to rephrase. But mistakes in professional conversations are normal. What matters is composure. If you remain calm while correcting yourself, people focus on your message, not your slip. Composure is more impressive than perfection. Another critical skill is managing your inner dialogue during meetings. Instead of thinking, I hope I do not mess up, train your mind to think, I am here to contribute. That internal sentence changes more than you realize. When you tell yourself, I am here to contribute, your posture subtly straightens, your breathing slows, and your tone becomes more grounded. Language inside your head shapes language outside your mouth, and the story you tell yourself becomes the energy you project to others. Psychologists have shown that self-talk directly influences performance. The ideas echoed in books like Mindset remind us that belief shapes behavior. If your internal voice says, I am not good at meetings, your body follows that script. If it says, I am learning to contribute, your behavior begins aligning with growth instead of fear. The more you practice this shift, the faster it becomes automatic. At first, you must consciously replace negative thoughts with constructive ones. But over time, the new sentence becomes natural, and the old fear-driven narrative weakens. Confidence is not a personality trait that some people are born with and others are denied. It is a practiced response built through repetition. Just as muscles strengthen with repeated movement, confidence strengthens with repeated participation. Every time you speak despite hesitation, you are training your nervous system. You are teaching your brain that meetings are not threats, but opportunities. This is similar to the principle discussed in Atomic Habits, where small repeated actions shape identity over time. When you contribute even once, you send a signal to yourself, I can handle this. When you repeat that action across meetings, your brain rewires its reaction to pressure. Fear gradually loses intensity because exposure builds familiarity. Over time, the physical symptoms reduce. Your heartbeat still rises slightly, but it stabilizes faster. Your breathing becomes deeper. Your voice sounds steadier even if you still feel a small wave of nervousness. Your thoughts become clearer because your mental energy is no longer consumed by self-judgment. Instead of thinking, what if I fail? You think, what is my point? That shift alone sharpens your delivery. One day you will notice something powerful. You are no longer calculating whether to speak or rehearsing sentences excessively in your head. You are listening strategically, identifying your moment, and entering naturally. That is the transformation. Not loudness. Not dominance. Not dramatic performance designed to impress the room. Just calm presence that signals confidence. In many ways, this aligns with the principles from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where proactive behavior replaces reactive fear. Instead of reacting to anxiety, you act with intention. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions, you choose contribution. Let me leave you with one final reflection. In your next meeting, when you feel that familiar hesitation rising in your chest, do not run from it. Do not label it as weakness. Recognize it as growth in progress. Say to yourself quietly, this is growth. That simple sentence reframes the moment from threat to training. Then take one steady breath and ground yourself physically before speaking. Deliver your prepared opening sentence clearly and calmly. Focus on clarity, not complexity. Once you have expressed your point, allow yourself to stop without over-explaining. You do not need to continue endlessly to prove competence. Even one strong, structured contribution changes how others perceive you. It also changes how you perceive yourself. Confidence in meetings is built in moments. Moments of decision when you choose to raise your hand. Moments of courage when you choose to speak before perfection arrives. Moments where you choose contribution over silence. Those moments may feel small at the time, almost insignificant. A single sentence. A short question. A brief summary. But when repeated consistently, they reshape identity in ways you cannot immediately see. What begins as effort eventually becomes habit. What begins as practice slowly becomes presence. In the beginning, you may still feel nervous before speaking. You may still rehearse your opening line silently. But after enough repetition, something subtle shifts. The hesitation shortens. The recovery becomes faster. The decision to speak feels less dramatic and more natural. And when you repeat those moments across weeks and months, they become your new normal. You are no longer the quiet observer waiting for permission or hoping for the perfect pause. You are the thoughtful participant who creates the moment instead of waiting for it. You stop asking yourself, "Should I speak?" and start asking, "What value can I add here?" That question alone changes your role in the room. It moves you from passive listener to active contributor. You are not someone who struggles in meetings. You are someone who participates with intention and clarity. That shift in identity influences everything else, including how you prepare, how you listen, and how you respond under pressure. You begin organizing your thoughts before entering the room. You begin noticing gaps in discussions. You begin identifying opportunities to bring focus when conversations drift. You are someone who adds structure when conversations become scattered. You are someone who asks questions that move discussions forward instead of sideways. You are someone whose voice carries value because it is calm, measured, and purposeful. When others speak, you listen deeply instead of anxiously planning your next sentence. When you speak, you do so with clarity rather than speed. That balance builds respect naturally. And that realization alone begins changing how others respond to you. People sense confidence not through dramatic language or loud delivery, but through steady presence and thoughtful timing. They notice that when you speak, there is intention behind your words. They begin turning toward you slightly when discussions grow complex. They begin expecting perspective from you rather than overlooking you. When you consistently show up, speak clearly, and remain composed, others begin to associate you with clarity and stability. Over time, their expectations rise. And with rising expectations come greater opportunities. You may be asked for your input more often. You may be invited into more strategic conversations. You may be trusted with larger responsibilities. And it does not happen because you became louder. It happens because you became reliable in your presence. It all begins with one internal sentence and one spoken contribution. From there, repetition builds strength. Strength builds consistency. And consistency builds confidence. Confidence is not built in dramatic moments of courage. It is built in ordinary meetings on ordinary days when you decide to participate instead of remain silent. Think about that carefully. Your transformation does not require a stage, a spotlight, or a major presentation. It requires the next weekly meeting. It requires the next team discussion. So the next time you walk into a meeting room, pause before you sit down. Take one steady breath. Remind yourself why you are there. You are not there to survive the meeting. You are there to contribute to it. You do not need perfect English. You do not need flawless delivery. You need clarity, preparation, and willingness. Speak once. Even if your voice shakes slightly. Speak again in the next meeting. Build from there. Each time you do, you strengthen not only your external presence, but your internal confidence. 1 year from now, you may look back and barely recognize the version of yourself who used to stay silent. You will notice that you speak more naturally. You enter discussions without overthinking. You handle disagreement calmly. That is not luck. That is accumulated courage. Meetings will continue throughout your career. Opportunities will continue appearing in rooms where decisions are made through discussion. The question is not whether meetings matter. The question is whether your voice will be part of them. Decide that it will. Decide that hesitation will not define you. Decide that participation, even imperfect participation, will shape your professional identity. Because presence is powerful. And when presence is practiced consistently, it becomes influence. And influence, built quietly over time, becomes opportunity.